It's Weber's Wednesday on The Voice. We look at all the things to do with North Devon's housing market with Malcolm Prescott from Weber's Estate Agents in Barnstaple. And Malcolm's on the phone. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for coming on to talk to us about this, because it is an extremely confusing time, isn't it, for people in the housing market? What sort of things should people be considering when they're looking to move or remortgage?
Well, I think the first thing to say, you're right, it's a confusing time, and I think there's never been probably a better time or a more important time for trusted guidance than now. And I should say, I'm not a mortgage advisor. Obviously, we deal with the sale of property, although we do have very good partners in Together Financial Solutions who help us with that. But clearly, the big subject is the cost of moving. And, you know, if we go back 6 to 12 months ago, probably the most important thing people were thinking about was, if I sell my house next week, is there something for me to buy? Because the market was moving so quickly. But I think today things have changed. We're in a different place now, and I think that, you know, people would be well considered and well advised to just consider the cost of their whole move, not just the sale of their home. And that means consideration, if they have a mortgage, of looking at their existing mortgage, because obviously all have different terms and conditions, so it's well worth making sure that people understand the terms of their existing mortgage before they make a move. And really, I would say, long-term plans, timescale, how important is it to move quickly? You know, the reality is there are very, very few people that have to move next week. And I think that at the moment people do need a bit of time. People need time to consider they're doing the right thing and making sure they've got their finances in order. And I think in terms of remortgaging, it's worth just saying that back in 2014 there was something that was called the Mortgage Market Review. And ever since then, part of the affordability assessment, financial advisors have built in, if you like, a potential rise of 2 or 3% in interest rates to make sure that, you know, that's taken into consideration should there be the change in rates. Clearly, we've seen that change, and now, you know, people are going to need to potentially consider the potential for new increased rates if they're remortgaging, and hence I go back to my first point. Never has there been a better time for trusted guidance than now. Yeah. Take the time to talk to people that you trust and do the research.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I don't mind sharing a personal story here, but affordability and rising interest rates does seem to go hand in hand, doesn't it? Because without the rise of interest rates, our affordability does increase. Now, in my own personal position, we were looking to move a few months ago, looked into a house, thought we found the perfect home, and our repayments would have been about £1,000 a month. We could do that. But then literally overnight, it went up to £1,400. So that is then something we can't now do. And there will be so many families and individuals across North Devon in the same boat, won't there?
There will, and again, I would say that the reality is, yes, if interest rates rise by definition, there will be payments rise as well, and exactly why home sellers and buyers need to look carefully at affordability. The press have been very good at creating dramatic stories around interest rates with, in truth, no real balance. I think what we're now seeing is perhaps a normalising of interest rates and perhaps a normalising of the market. If we go back to pre-pandemic levels, that's really where we are today. And if we think about interest rates, we've been used to unrealistically low interest rates for a few years now. But the reality is that was never going to last. Rates are now normalising, and the truth is we won't go back to the 1%, the 2%, and the like. You know, I think we are now where we are, but that is, I think, a normal position to be in. We've just been used to an unrealistically low period. And I think it's worth just mentioning that in the last just 2 or 3 years alone, certainly since the start of the pandemic, it's clear to see that house prices in this area have risen by circa 20%. So whilst there will be for some that pain, if you like, if you also consider the rise in house prices, people have also done quite well in terms of the house price increases that they've seen. And even if there is a correction over the next 12 months, I still don't believe it will go to the levels of the increases we've seen. So,
how do you work that out? Do you look at sort of past patterns and sort of forecast the future? Because without a crystal ball, and my goodness, I wish you had one, Malcolm, we can't really tell, can we?
No, I mean, all of us, from our point of view as a business, we are selected members of the Guild of Property Professionals. We're also part of a large relocation company, the biggest in the UK. And what that allows us to do is to talk to professionals, commentators across the UK. And that's important. We need to understand what's happening in the thick of the economy and the market, not just what's happening in North Devon. It is a much broader picture, and the reason for that is, of course, because there are still lots of people who continue to move to this area. That's just the reality of it. So it's important for us to understand the whole of market. And so yes, I'd love a crystal ball, but what we do have is some trusted commentators and individuals that we do listen to, and who have been broadly correct in their assumptions and their predictions over the last 2 or 3 years.
And what about the prospective buyers and sellers at the moment? What sort of things are they asking you or concerned about?
Clearly, the first conversation is around mortgage rates. For those people that have mortgages, there is what's going to happen with mortgage rates. And our answer to that, of course, go back to the crystal ball, difficult, but I think the view is that now that I would like to think that we're starting to get a little bit more trust in our fiscal policy, that we will start to see a stabilising of the markets, a stabilising where the banks and building societies, who, make no mistake, have plenty of money to lend. Yeah. I heard a quote recently that said they're dripping with money. Mm-hmm. It's just that they haven't had the confidence to set rates over a long period of time. We're now in a position, hopefully, where that stabilisation is starting to happen. And then what you will see is that mortgage companies will start to compete with each other. And then you will start to see those slightly better mortgage rates coming through. So for me, I think that we are simply going back to a market which we would have seen pre-pandemic, i.e. in 2019. Similar transaction levels and back to a normalising of the market rather than that very, very speedy market that we've had in the last 2 years, which was unrecognisable, and it was a record, period for many, many agents and house sales across the whole of the UK, not just North Devon.
Yeah, well, I mean, just from my own experience of seeing houses and people moving in and out, or in the area that I live in, some of these houses didn't even make it to market. They were sold, and you had new neighbours overnight. And during the pandemic, that seemed to be quite a common story, didn't it?
Well, it was, and the conversation with home sellers some time ago, a few months ago, it was more about, if I sell my property next week, have I got anywhere to buy?
Yes.
The problem was there wasn't enough stock, and it's just amazing, really, to see how quickly that's changed. It is now more about people looking ahead and considering the future and considering how long am I going to stay in this property. So yes, it's a different market now.
I've noticed that on my daily obsession with websites and like Rightmove and things, because I like looking at houses and I also like being nosy at the insides of them as well. And I've noticed that they are staying on these websites for a longer period of time now. They're not sort of snapped up immediately. Is that the case everywhere?
There will always be properties that, if they are in the right location, at the right price, they will still sell quickly. And we are still seeing some of those properties where there is demand, and there will continue to be demand right through next year. Don't make any mistake, properties will continue to be bought and sold. There is no doubt about that. But we've just simply returned to what, and I keep saying it, but I just think we've returned to normal levels of business, i.e. what we would have seen pre-pandemic. We've all become used to an incredibly fast-moving market, but we're now just back to where really good advice, solid marketing, great communication become far more essential than they were in the last 2 years. And I think in terms of prices, many others in the profession, I think, are suggesting that we're not going to see the huge price drops, which some, I think, ill-advised commentators have suggested. There may be a correction in prices over the next year or so, but we're not going to see those big price falls that are being predicted by some. 5 or 10% maybe, but the reality is there is still demand for people to live in this location, and as long as there's demand and there's people that want to move, then we will still have a what I would call a decent normal market. And I'll just make one more point. Most of the property sales we deal with are people that move from within the area, perhaps people who are trading up or trading down.
Okay.
And I think it is fair to say that whilst that, yes, you may well be potentially selling your property at maybe 5% lower than you'd hoped, but you will be buying at 5% lower than you had expected. So what you lose in one hand, you gain in the other. Okay. It's about the price difference, not necessarily about the headline price.
Okay, Malcolm, and there's a lot of information there to take on. If somebody wants an informal conversation with an estate agent, how should they get in touch with you or find out more about Webbers?
To call into any one of our 6 North Devon offices, and we will be pleased to see you. People can email info@webbers.co.uk, and we will make sure that goes to the local office, or go to our website, webbers.co.uk, and you will find telephone numbers there for all of our local North Devon branches, and we'll be pleased to help.
Wonderful. And we'll speak to you again in a month from now, if that's all right.
Yeah, very happy to.
We're loving North Devon. This is The Voice.